The reason I chose to work in the antiques and collectibles industry, it's kind of there's two answers to that. Number one, you grew up middle class in the Trenton area, which is on Trent, oddly enough. But if you grew up in the Trenton area, middle class, you learn to cherish Lenox china, Lenox porcelain, because Lenox was based in Trenton, and Trenton they were in some regards the Staffordshire of America, certainly in terms of porcelain production. The best porcelain in America was made in Trenton, late 19th century, and primarily because we brought Brits over. We brought British designers and chemists, people from Ireland, from County Cork. I mean, we brought the best of the best to America to ply their trade here. And Trenton had this big river, the Delaware River, that supplied transport, supplied power, supplied raw natural product. In the back of my yard were these bottomless pits called the clay pits, where clay was dug for pottery and porcelain production in Trenton. So it was a local thing, and you knew it was important because what you did not want to break as a young man growing up in the Trenton area was your Lenox china. So when I started gathering when I was 16 at local flea markets and yard sales, it was in pursuit of Lenox china. But one day, my parents asked me to come over to the house to look at some. I was 17 at the time. I'd already been a porcelain dealer, but I went to their home to look at some of this pottery, this Roseville pottery they found. Never heard of it. And the second I laid eyes on it, that was it. I mean, I was at love at first sight. One of those lucky people that at an early age found my calling. And fortunately, as a businessman, it was a calling at which I could make a living. So that was the first half of the answer. I discovered porcelain and then pottery at an early age, and within 5 or 6 years, I came to understand what arts and crafts was. Because the germinal show in America for arts and crafts was the Princeton exhibition at the Princeton Art Museum. I lived 6 miles from Princeton. So, I mean, this confluence of events, if it had been any earlier, I would have missed the curve that contained interest in the arts and crafts. It wouldn't have been worth anything. There was no market for it prior to my involvement in the mid-70s, mid-1970s. If it was any later, I couldn't have played because I had no money. I mean, I put myself through college. I was working in a supermarket cleaning floors on night crews. So my war chest was about $100. So I happened to be very fortunate to have not only discovered this thing that I loved so much and that completely captivated me, but it was at a time when I could play even at a minor level as a merchant, if you will. The second half of that, which I think is as important in answering your question, it's not just what got me involved, but what sustained me. It's been a long time, and as I mentioned in one of my classes here, you get jaded after a while. I've seen a lot of material. I mean, I love groovy pottery, but there's only so much green you could see until it all blurs into a single field. But what I'm passionate about is the philosophical backbone of the arts and crafts, that this was made for a purpose, and the way this material looks is driven by that purpose. It's a philosophically driven aesthetic, and it was meant and had lofty sentiments that ring true to today. It was meant to improve our lives by making us better people, by teaching us, because of its very nature, that integrity is a good thing to have in our lives. To teach integrity and to live with integrity is critical if you want to be a whole human being. And so that's a long answer to your question, but thank you. It's a really good question, and I appreciate being asked. I've had the privilege of watching and learning from a lot of auctioneers over the last 4+ decades, and if I considered it, I don't want to sound like an actor. Acting is my craft because I only believe that so far. But certainly, my approach to auctioneering is that it is a craft and it's something that you continue to evolve in. And I learn pretty much as much from a bad auctioneer as I do from a good one. The qualities I look for. Because a lot of people don't trust the auction process. They don't trust it in several ways. Are there really bids? Is that a chandelier bid? Is the material I'm bidding on being accurately represented? If I leave a bid, is that going to be executed as though I were in the room, or are they going to start with my bid? That's part of trusting an auctioneer. I believe that transparency, as much as can be provided in the auction process, is critical. And curiously, it's more available than ever these days. So I've seen auctions that were live, that were shown live via video over the internet across the world. We don't employ that any longer. That availability is not something that we have, but audio is available. You can actually listen to an auction live anywhere on the planet. That's never happened before. Furthermore, there are ways of, for example, how do you handle the bidding process? We're clear about our instructions that no lots are reserved or have a minimum price above the low estimate, and usually they're below the low estimate. That can be a fungible thing, and I think that it's important to ask the auctioneer you're bidding with directly, how are reserves handled, how are absentee bids handled. When I call an auction, I like to bring my crowd into that bidding process. For example, I'll say, today's auction we have, you see there's 150 people in the room, but additionally, there are 350 people bidding live from around the world on the telephone. They'll be off to my left. I'll identify for you if it's a phone bidder. We have between 2,000 and 3,000 people bidding on the internet on several platforms, including BidSquare, which is one our company's involved with. And finally, people have left us absentee bids, solid bids in writing, which I'll be executing from the podium. I will announce for you the source of competition so you know who you're up against. And if a lot fails to sell, I will say passed. And if it sells, I will say sold, and I'll announce the amount of the bid. And I might say to the phones or to the internet or to someone, I'll announce the number of the bidder in the room. So I think that what makes a good auctioneer, again, a long answer to your question, but what makes a good auctioneer is transparency of the process. And you should be able to find out the answers to all your questions. Where are the reserves? What guarantees do I have of condition? How do I know where a piece is selling before the sale even starts? And I always recommend, if you're working with a new auction house, it's best to attend a couple of auctions and not buy anything at first, and not just watch the proceedings, but talk to the people standing around you, especially the people in the back of the room. Usually guys, usually in clusters. Those are the dealers. They know what's going on. So what do I look for in a person who wants to work for my company? First of all, I'm not very good at hiring, so I don't do it anymore. I'm bad at hiring and I'm bad at firing. So we have a managing partner who's an HR person who does a great job of it. But certainly enthusiasm and love of the material, especially if you're going to be a cataloger or a specialist, and most of our workers are that, usually art history majors. Maybe with a minor in literature or photography or medieval studies. I mean, anything that gives someone an art background is that's going to give them a leg up. By and large, we think we pay well, but there's people don't get rich working at an auction company. It's like any business. The money's in sales. And if you're looking to get rich, I think being a cataloger or a specialist at an auction company is probably not the way to do it. But how does one define rich? If you want to be rich in terms of handling material, physically, personally, seeing an endless skein of decorative art and fine art that passes through your hands. We sell 16,000 objects a year. Many of them aren't very good, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have no illusions of grandeur here. We're not Christie's. But for what we specialize in, which is 20th century decorative art, we're second to none. And if you have an interest in 20th century decorative art, you're going to see a lot of great stuff. And especially my specialty, decorative ceramics, and my wife's specialty, Suzanne, my wife and partner, Suzanne Perrault, another Antiques Roadshow appraiser, her specialty is contemporary glass. And we have another specialist who knows Scandinavian and European furniture, and another specialist who knows Art Nouveau and Tiffany. So that's what we attract to us. And if you like seeing that kind of thing and learning about it, and not just learning about it by touching it and seeing it, but then you're able to ask, well, tell me about this piece. I have to catalog it. What do I say about it, and why is it? We answer those questions. We want our staff to know this. So there's a great... There's a treasure trove in information and accessibility to fine art. Beyond that, we do have an esprit de corps. We're at war. Auctions are wartime. We own the company. The buck stops with us. So we take this very seriously. And when an auction is done, and people see an auction, oh, isn't that fun? That was great. That was a blast. That last 6 hours. That last 6 hours is the tip of an iceberg. That was 4, 5, sometimes 6 months of preparation to make that auction happen. And when it's finally over, there's a collective sigh of relief. Win, lose, or draw, you have that's as much a sense of completion as you will get from the auction process, because the reality too is you're already working on the next sale even before this one's finished. So they esprit de corps, they handling the material. We think we pay well, we treat our staff very well, because we are really, really grateful to be able to do this for a living and to have the qualitative group of people we have working for us. The change in technology has affected the antiques market in unimaginable ways, and especially the auction market. And I don't think I'm wrong there. I'm not saying the auction market because I know that best. I mean, I was a dealer. I was a private dealer. I worked at galleries. I owned a gallery. I've done antique shows, and I still attend them. So while I'm primarily known as an auctioneer, I've been a lot of things in this field over the years. So I think I'm safe in saying that the auction business has changed more than anything else because of technology. I mean, my first auctions, the only phone we had was a plug-in that I had to rent through a phone company twice a year, or have it plugged in from the hotel where I was holding a sale in the ballroom. That had to go through the hotel switchboard. There weren't cell phones yet. And then there were cell phones. But our catalogs were shot on film, and I learned how to be a studio photographer to shoot my own catalogs. And we had to have color separations, drum scan. Then all of a sudden there's digital printing. I mean, I'm producing the best catalogs we've ever done, full color throughout, better stock, perfect bound, unimaginable quality as far as at our level is concerned, which if you saw our catalogs, my first catalog went out when I presented everything to the printer, and I asked the printer when it would be finished. The date he gave me was 2 weeks after the auction. I mean, I would have lost my house. It was crazy. When he finally gave me the end product, it was so off register. The separations, there's 3 different colors and sometimes 4 that have to be laid on top of each other, that one of my competitors said when I sent out my catalogs, I should include seasickness pills because they're so off register. Okay, I mean, this is how bad the technology was in the early to mid 80s when I started. Now, you don't even use color separations. It's all digital. And forget the internet. I mean, the access to information. You want to find out what something is worth, you go online. We subscribe to a couple. We have to. We have BidSquare and a few others that we use for their databases, but it's easy to find. Information has never been more available, ever, in the history of humankind than it is right now because of the internet, but also bidding, absentee bidding, or bidding live, not even absentee. You are live, interactive, any place on the planet. You can even hear the auction, and in some cases see the auction on video while you're participating in it. And this has radically changed the field. And it's one of the reasons why, I mean, when I held an auction in New York City back in the 80s, I might have 150, 200 people in the room. I might have one wall cell with push buttons that I had 1 or 2 people bid through, and then I would have absentee bids. That was it. I might have 250 people participate in an auction. Now, our record is we've had 400 people on the phone for one sale, 200 plus in the room, 150 leaving absentee bids, and close to 4,000 people bidding live over the internet. That's for one sale. We're talking close to 5,000 people. So it's radically changed the auction game, and I think it's one of the reasons why antique shows are fizzling out. Certainly in the United States, I can't speak to Europe, but they're fizzling out because they just don't have access to that level of participation. So to answer your question, it's a great question. Technology has radically changed the auction business. I've been approached by other firms to do online teaching in the past, and it just never seemed the right mix wasn't there. A combination of it didn't seem like their platform was sufficient to what I wanted to do, and maybe I didn't have the time and didn't have enough knowledge in my head to pull this all together and want to share this with you. So I think it's timing and what appears to be the quality of the outreach that attracted me to my antique school. I think what I really like, though, more than anything about this is talking about arts and crafts is one thing, and it's something I've done for many years, but this is a chance to really interact. I mean, I know it may sound sexy that you can ask questions, right? But you really can, and I'm hoping you do. If I don't get feedback from the people watching this, then I'll feel like this did not provide me the experience I wanted. So by all means, fire away. As with any subject, you and I talking back and forth for 3.5 to 4 hours is only going to teach you so much. I'm hoping that what you learn from this course is, rather than learn, I hope that what develops within you is an interest in the period and a desire to learn more about it. Because when I got involved in the field in the early to mid 70s, there was virtually nothing in print. There were so few books written. This was the only people who knew about arts and crafts were the lucky people such as me who stumbled upon them, and academics. But now, there might be over 1,000 books on the arts and crafts available to you. So there's a great deal of information. I'm hoping that this stimulates interest in at least one of the areas, if not the totality of arts and crafts. Because it will certainly keep you busy for a while. And I hope that the enthusiasm that I've been able to maintain and develop for over 4 decades is something that through the lens I've been able to share with you and encourage you in the same way. I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. I mean, I got lucky. As I said, I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. I don't know what I could have done differently. I didn't have any money. So it's like, what else would I tell myself? I couldn't have planned it this well. So,
just the way you wanted it.
Yeah, I couldn't. There's no advice to if I had 20/20 hindsight, how would I do it differently? I don't think it could have happened differently. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and I loved the right thing. There was no money, there was no market, there were no books, there was no auction, there was no Antiques Roadshow, there was no plan. It was exciting. It was a lot of fun to be able to be so heavily involved in something that was not formed yet. To have been there for the start of this field, and I wasn't a driver in it back then. I was a teenager. I was supplying the people that were making it happen. But there was still a contact high from being associated with the folks that were putting arts and crafts on the map early on. So I don't know what I could possibly have done differently. I should have had more money, but that wasn't going to happen based on where I should have known more. Well, you couldn't know more. There wasn't there. I mean, considering what was available to anyone at the time and what was available to me, working a couple of jobs in addition to being an antique dealer and a pottery dealer, I think it all just fell into place naturally and perfectly, and for that I will have unending gratitude.